Today I'd like to tell you the story of a lady I'll call Marge. I first met Marge when she was in the twilight years of her life. She called me to learn more about one of the tools we use in estate and gift planning to see if there might be benefit for her. As the years went along, I visited with her periodically to help her with various needs she had regarding her estate plan and finances. But the really important part of those visits was getting to know her. Let me share with you a bit of her story. Marge and her husband George had sold their small business years ago and moved to Independence, where they had the sense God was calling them. Their story is one of dedication and stewardship. They lived comfortably, cared for their family, and practiced the principles of good stewardship. They were active in their church and community. They made God's work a primary focus of their life. Marge found great satisfaction in volunteering, knitting, and baseball, but she would say her time volunteering was most rewarding. Section 151:9 of the Doctrine and Covenants calls us as disciples to be found in the forefront of worthwhile organizations. While that scripture had not been written when she started volunteering, Marge truly lived it in her daily life. She offered her time to church as well as numerous other community organizations, including hospitals. When she finally stopped volunteering due to health concerns, she had volunteered at numerous hospitals for over 48 years. And later, she found ways to give her time at the retirement center where she lived. Relationships were important to Marge. Her family was important to her. She cared for her beloved George until his death. She cared for her 2 children until they too preceded her in death, and then helped provide for her grandchildren. Friends were also important, and she took time to develop those relationships. One friend told me about the hours and hours she spent helping her family get settled when they moved in across the street. And then Marge would spend time knitting and crocheting on her back porch. Marge felt investing time in those relationships was part of her calling as a disciple, and found ways to share God's love with those she invested her time with. Marge and George also cared for their temporal affairs with the same kind of attention that they devoted to other elements in their lives. They saved and managed their financial resources in ways they felt were in a manner designed of God, taking care to give generously to tithing first, then saving and investing for the future, and using the remainder to provide for themselves and their family. Several years following George's death, Marge called me and we began discussing her hopes and dreams. She wanted her grandchildren's future to be secure because of the passing of their parents. And she had great hope for what more the church could do to fulfill Christ's mission in the world. She and her husband had created their estate plans years earlier that provided for each other, for their grandchildren, other family, and also made provisions for the church. When I met with Marge, she fine-tuned those plans by utilizing gift scenarios that provided her with an income stream as well as furthering Christ's mission. And in her estate, she made provisions for gifts that would provide a lasting legacy to help move forward the mission of the church she loved so much. Marge, to me, lived out the calling of what it means to be a generous disciple. She gave of her time, her talents, and her treasure to make a difference in the world. She had a vision of God's peaceable kingdom and what could be, and she gave of herself and her financial resources to make that happen. Then when age and health took its toll, she gave of her financial resources and tangible assets and made very significant gifts to further Christ's mission to a world in need. In my conversations with Marge, I saw that she caught the vision of what section 163:9 means when it calls faithful disciples to give according to the desires of their hearts and to discover their true capacity. Marge realized the joy that comes through receiving God's grace and giving of herself generously. You might say that Marge was unique, but there's a Marge that lies within each of us. My prayer for you this day is that the Marge that lies within you will find expression in your daily life. That you take time and find ways to develop relationships to share God's love. That you find ways to make a difference in the church and other worthwhile organizations. And that you discover your true capacity to be a generous disciple, making the unique contribution that only you can make to further Christ's mission.